Okay, let's take a quick look at the DAWs software and hardware that you're going to need for MUS 3701. Because we're teaching this online this semester, it's a little difficult. The reason for that is that a lot of software costs a ton of cash, which makes it hard for students to buy it. And frankly, there's just a lot of programs that can be used. For a DAW, I could use Pro Tools, Cubase, Nuendo, or Sequoia. And then for things like synthesis, I could use Reason, Cherry Voltage Modular, Tasman, or Falcon. Then, of course, you have problems of platform-specific programs, like Logic is Mac only and Sequoia is PC only. And while there are some online DAWs like Soundtrap and Soundation, they're generally worse than GarageBand on your iPhone and just completely unusable for what we would be doing in class. So there's a couple of considerations that I had when I was tweaking the syllabus and the software list for this class that are really summed up best by Vanessa Thiem Ament in her book, The Fully Grail, which is that the more one relies on bells and whistles to do the job, the less likely that person will ever develop the true craftsmanship to dazzle. And that any veteran sound professional will tell you that technology is the tool that helps, not makes, the skilled craftsperson. So what that means is that basically teaching the concepts is more effective than teaching a specific software package for an online class like this. It just really is better if you know how to do things like splice, fade, overdub, punch, edit MIDI, and then can take that from one platform to the next so that you could use it in Logic and then do the same thing in Pro Tools or do it in Ableton, rather than just learning the shortcuts on how to do it with every single specific package that you could think of. This actually makes you more competitive when you're looking for a job as well. It's a very useful skill to have. So with that in mind, you can use any of the DAWs on the next page and plugins for regular coursework, and you can use your full arsenal of purchased plugins on projects. You just have to freeze and flatten those tracks out first. If you have other specific things that you want to use, those will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Just ask. The only thing I am specifically saying you cannot use ever is FL Studio or Noteflight. Those are just completely inappropriate for professional level work. So for DAWs, you can use any of the following, and all of these are also installed in Varner 236 already. There is Ableton Live 10. We have the standard version installed on the lab. I personally have the suite version, so you can use either of those if you have access to them. They have very competitive pricing for academic prices, and they are both Mac and PC compatible, which is great. If you are a Mac user, there is Logic Pro X as part of the Pro Apps Bundle for Education. This is probably the single greatest steal available in terms of bang for your buck. It costs $200, but you get Logic Pro X essentially for full price, and then you also get Final Cut Pro and a couple of other things that you'll never use ever again, but you basically are getting Final Cut for the price of Logic at the same time. It's great. The only downside is it is Mac only. Another one to seriously consider is Reaper, which at $60 is an absolute steal and has come to replace Pro Tools as my favorite DAW for just flat out recording. It takes in lanes in a great way. It does comps in the best way I've ever seen. It's quiet, it's clean, and it is fast. Also, it's Mac and PC, so you can use it on whatever, and their license is extremely generous. The one downside, though, is that Reaper does not have any built-in virtual instruments. However, I have a list of those that you can use and have links provided that will help with that. If you do decide to go with Reaper, I strongly encourage you to install the SWS and S&M extension, which provides additional functions that are not built into the DAW by default. It gives you things like track snapshots and mix snapshots that are really, really useful if you want to A and B a mix against each other or do any type of saving in that. And then there's Repack, which is hands down the most useful plugin ever developed for Reaper. It just syncs with GitHub repositories so that you can search Repack for additional actions, scripts, instruments, etc. Just open up Repack, type what you're searching for. You'll probably find 6 or 7 different options, and you can just download those and it will automatically install them into Reaper for you. It's wonderful. For notation, if you don't have a score writer already, I really recommend MUS Score because it's free. Does some pretty good stuff and is really easy to learn. If you have another score writer program that you prefer to use, Finale, Sibelius, or Dorico, that is fine. But again, Noteflight will not cut it at all. So here is the list of plugins that you can use. Your assignments will be limited to using the built-in instruments or effects in your DAW and the following instrument plugins. So there's Dext, which is a Yamaha DX7 emulator. And I also found a very, very cool website that uses an AI to generate presets for Dext, or if you have an actual physical Yamaha DX7, you can load them up on there. It's very fun. It is a massive, massive time suck, so stay away from that unless it's the weekend and you're done with all of your assignments. Next up is Helm, which is a subtractive synthesizer with some very, very cool MIDI mapping features built in. I highly recommend it. It's a very fun program. After that is Tunefish, which is a sampling synthesizer kind of hybrid program. It's pretty cool. It was developed initially as a one-day challenge, and it sounds really good. Following that is TX16WX. It is a sampler, and it's one that is really, really well done. Specifically, if you are using Reaper, you will definitely want to download this since Reaper does not have a sampler built in. But it gives you some really cool features for doing multiple key zones, multiple velocity layers, or anything like that. And it's very easy to use. I frankly recommend that you download that one for whichever DAW you're using. Next up, though, is the big one, Spitfire Audio. They are a company that provides excellent sample libraries that are very easy to use. And they have 2 in particular that you need to download as soon as humanly possible. The first one is Labs, which is their collection of experimental, non-orchestral, and generally crazy sounds. They are all 100% free, and they now have made it super easy. They just have a download all option. You just have to create an account with Spitfire and then download all. And maybe do that before you go to bed. It's a big download. And then for traditional instruments, they have BBC Symphony Discovery. It costs $50, or you can get it for free if you fill out their marketing survey and then wait 2 weeks. And yes, they are very clear. It is 14 days you have to wait, and then they will send you a link to download the full version. I strongly recommend that you do this on day 1. It is a great sample library. It's not as powerful as the full version of BBC Symphony Pro or East West or Vienna Symphonic, but it's really good for free. After that, there is the Surge synthesizer. This has quickly become one of my favorites, but the latest update in particular did something really cool and added support for tuning files from Scala. So if anyone wants to go into microtonality, you can do that. It's fun and it sounds really good. Then there is VCV Rack, which we're going to be exploring a lot when we do synthesis. This is a virtual Eurorack modular synthesizer, and it has a ton of free modules. We'll talk about that quite a bit after the midterm. Last but not least, there is UPI Sketch, which you will need for the first couple of weeks. This is a really cool program that allows you to draw sounds out. It's based on the UPIC work of Xenakis in the 60s and 70s, And the French government has been very, very generous in sponsoring this, along with some other programs that kind of are taking his ideas and open sourcing them and making them accessible without all of the crazy hardware requirements that he had back in that time. Throughout the course, we're also going to be doing a lot of stuff with sampling. And in addition to recording your own, you may not be able to find something that you need and need to go online and get it. So there's 3 sites that I recommend you just bookmark as soon as possible. freesound.org, the BBC Sample Library, and the Internet Archive. All of those have tons of public domain sounds available that you can go through and grab and use in your projects. Just be very careful that you take note of what format, sample rate, and bit depth you're using. Some stuff on there is going to be weird and have like a sample rate of 22K, or occasionally you'll find a ambisonic or multi-channel file and you'll open it up and have 16 channels of data. That doesn't really help you. Finally, if you're working with wavetable synthesis or vector synthesis, like the wavetable device in Ableton Suite, you might need what's called a single cycle waveform. This is a single instance of a waveform from the start to the finish, non-repeating. These are really cool if you know what to do with them and you have a device that supports them, but they are not appropriate for any other use. There's 2 sites that I have used extensively in my own work, the Adventure Kid waveforms and Void Vertex. They have hundreds of these available for free to use. Some additional free software that I just recommend having on your machine for general purpose use. Of course, Audacity. It's basically the Swiss Army knife of audio editing programs. It's not going to be enough for coursework, but it is still a really, really useful program to have. If you don't have Final Cut or Adobe Premiere and need to do some video editing, DaVinci Resolve is great. They have 2 versions. One is free, one is professional, and is decidedly not. For this class, any video editing you're going to do, you can use the free version. It will be more than fine. If you need to do any photo editing or image manipulation, GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program, is great. It is not a full Photoshop replacement, though, because it does not have the ability to draw or put shape primitives or anything like that into a photo. It's not, unfortunately, something that they're planning on adding either. But fortunately, there is Inkscape, which is a vector drawing program that will allow you to create SVGs or to edit an existing image by adding SVG overlays onto it so you can draw things on top of it. If you need to record your desktop, for example, you have a crazy thing happening and you can't figure it out and need me to help you debug it, OBS, the Open Broadcasting System, is great for desktop recording. And if you don't have it already, VLC is the best media player you can possibly get. If it can't be played in VLC, the file is probably corrupt and cannot be played, period. Also remember that as an Oakland University student, you do get access to Microsoft Office for free as long as you are enrolled. Please, please, please download that. Do not send me Pages files or Google Docs files, Word only, or Excel, or Publisher, please. And make sure that you download that and that it's getting used, because if people don't download it, they might stop providing it for free. With the hardware, you can use any of the hardware in Varner 236 to complete assignments. But if you don't want to come to campus and just work entirely from home, here's what you're going to need. You will need a computer, and it will have to be PC or Mac. You cannot use Chromebooks. They just are not appropriate for pro audio work, period. You will need a MIDI controller. Any number of keys or pads, whatever you like. Some people prefer percussion controllers. Some people prefer keyboards. I have my own bizarre preferences for creating my own devices. You will also need an audio interface and a recorder or a microphone. You can get any type of interface and microphone. I would generally recommend that you have both a large and a small diaphragm condenser. That will give you a lot of different variety of sound, and it will give you a pretty good ability to capture most things. A nice kind of halfway solution, though, is to just get a portable Zoom recorder like the H1N, the H4N, or the H6N. These have a really cool feature built in that they can double as both an audio interface and an audio recorder. So with the H4 and the H6, you can plug in external microphones, plug the H6 or the H4 into your computer, and use it to record like you would with a PreSonus or Focusrite interface. But you can also use the built-in microphones on the Zoom recorder as well for recording purposes. They are very, very, very nice. One downside to those, though, is the H1N does not have the ability to use external microphones, so be aware of that. You will definitely need headphones for this class, and I do recommend going with wired and not wireless, if only because wireless includes a latency that can really add up, especially if you're recording. So be aware of that. Get something that will plug in directly to your interface. Obviously, hardware can cost a lot, so there are some things that you can do to avoid the costs. All of the DAWs, Ableton, Logic, and Reaper, have some sort of QWERTY to MIDI keyboard feature. It's not great, but technically you can do all of the work that you'll be doing in class with that feature. And then for gear suggestions, if you have questions or you need help finding gear that will help fit your budget, let me know. I'm happy to offer suggestions. Just set up a time and we can go over the options and find a solution that will work for you.